Hello there, I'm a Challenger League coach, but my current rank is Master. I want to make a very detailed Malphite guide. One thing I want you to understand that Malphite is a bit worse in this patch, just because AD carry items such as Quince's Rage Blade does magic damage and also provides magic and armor penetration. From the other hand, Rapid Fire, as before, does magic damage on hit. Kraken, of course, does magic damage, and the other item, Storm Razor, magic damage, right? Which it did do magic damage before, but now it does more, right? And also it doesn't slow, it provides them movement speed. Um, Okay, so let's get straight up into it. So I want to talk about runes first of all, not even about champion abilities, but runes, right? So what I don't like at all that Malphite players are not thinking at all. This guy is the rank 1 Malphite player, right? Every game he goes Comet, sometimes he changes his rune tree a little bit, but it's usually Comet, Grasp, Comet, Comet, Grasp, and so on, right? In fact, even in matchups like Sion, he's taking Grasp and usually not Grasp, my bad, Comet, where he's just like useless, right? Because of his shield, he just shields off every Q, right? So it's just like useless. Now, okay, if I go to the rank 2 Korean Malphite player, he does the same thing, man. It just gives off that Malphite players are not thinking too hard. Again, Comet, Grasp with a little bit of changes, but most of the games you're gonna see Comet, Grasp. Now I have in here Lethal Tempo, so why would you go Lethal Tempo? What does it allow you to do? So I'm gonna say two examples of matchups where it's really great for you to take uh, Lethal Tempo. Garen, the most generic low elo matchups. If you're low elo Malphite, you're gonna see Garen don't stop, right? Now, other one, Kane. I mean, there are many others where you're supposed to take Lethal Tempo, right? These were my rules. Now, in here, I went for also an on-hit build. I went 13, 3, 14, 8, 19, 18 days to go, my bad, right? So it was a Kane top, which is a bit more popular than before, right? Now, from the other hand, Garen. Why would you take it into Garen? So, for example, I type lethal tempo Malphite, right? I want you guys to see it with your eyes how this works, right? So I go to this, I click on this video, and lots of Malphite players wouldn't be daring, or they would be scared, or they would say it does not have any validity to go for lethal tempo.
Killer.
Now, as you can see with our eyes, that Malphite has synergy. Just to clear something out, he has synergy with lethal tempo, so he gains bonus attack range from his W and from lethal tempo, right? While also he has an on-hit effect, right? So his W scales really well with lethal tempo because it's a on-hit effect, right? So in here we see he even gets a double kill
This is
because
where
of
we
the
go to
lethal
the
tempo,
temple.
right? And without no, he doesn't get a double kill, but borderline he gets a double kill, right? But without lethal tempo, he wouldn't have as much damage. Like you would barely scratch him with your comet, you would barely
Okay.
scratch him with your how is it called, with your grasp, because the issue is Garen specifically, he sustains through and he can press his W into your comet or even his Q to dodge your comet, right? So he has just too much sustain for you to go for random runes like grasp and comet, right? And it's just not great every game. Like I want to tell you guys that on Malphite specifically, even if you're tank, you can go little tempo. In fact, I went for a on hit build as well, just because I felt like you can go full tank if you feel like. Um, this is my personal preference, of course, but really up to you, honestly. You can go also full tank depending on what you should build into the enemy team or what does your team value, but I felt like carrying, so I went for a carry build this game. And I played in here like into master players, like supposedly master diamond one, right? I'm not sure what rank is he currently, but I just wanted to tell you guys that it has a lots of validity, right? Now, let's get back to the abilities, right? So his passive is a shield, right? It's definitely does scale with armor. It just simply means that your size gonna be bigger. But one thing to understand that he gets a 9% shield, which is really important to know. I hope I don't get DC'd here. So this is like a 9% shield apparently, right? I think it's 10%. I think they changed it, but I'm not quite sure, right? It has like an 8-second cooldown. That's also really important to know, but it goes down to 7 and 6 per level. Now, usually you're gonna use this passive for short trades. For example, say I'm level 2, level 3, right? Whatever level I might be. You can go for very short trades, which means that your passive is soaking the short trade, right? We can get a whatever beginner item as well. Um, it just means that now our passive is like soaking a trade, and we're gonna go for a very, very short trade, right? And then maybe we're gonna swing in a basic attack as well, because like when you short trade with Malphite, often you wanna initiate, but you can also like auto WE, and then space a bit backwards, then swing in a basic attack. You can sneak in a basic attack, and it's really hard for them to trade back because their attack speed is slowed, right? And you have bonus attack range, which means you have 175, but some champs like Tryndamere have say 125, right? Which means that you can just like outspace them and just maybe get an extra swing in something. You can sneak in a basic attack basically. Now, okay, so it's meant for short trading. Generally speaking, you gotta wait 8-7 seconds. It's also the minions, if they damage you, they're gonna reset it. So usually you should like you go for short trades, disengage, try to not be poked at all, right? Until you do this over and over to the point where even if you don't have your shield, you have control over the all-in, over the lane, which means that even if you're gonna lose minion in the process of gaining your shields back, if you can dominate to the point where they can't all-in you anymore and you have all-in dominance, right? It means that you did something really bad, right? So sometimes even sacrificing minions just to get your shield back and constantly short trade is better in long term. Okay. Now, Granite Shield does not refresh its cooldown from damage that is mitigated by shield. That's also a really important thing to know. Now, it's usually a mid-late game thing, right? Malphite's Q. So Malphite's Q steals movement speed, right? And this dummy has 0 speed, so I got 0 bonus movement speed, right? And it also slows the target. Now, one really important thing to know against champions like Mastery, you don't want to Q them. The issue is if you Q them, or Z, Fizz, right? If they E your Q, you won't get the bonus movement speed, neither the slow, and it will also go on cooldown. Now, if they use their E a bit early, like Fizz uses his E a bit early, or Z uses his ult a bit early, then what's gonna happen? Your Q won't be cancelled, and will be cancelled, my bad, and it won't go on cooldown, right? Um, from the other hand, how else would you use this skill? So, usually, just to be clear, when you're pathing towards the objective, you can also use your Q to get a little bit of a bonus movement speed. The wolves have the most movement speed in the jungle, right? 493. So if I Q this wolf, this is the camp that's gonna give me the most movement speed when I'm pathing towards the uh, let's say Herald or Baron, right? Now it gains 788 movement speed when it goes back. So if you're even smarter as Malphite, what you can do, depending on the cooldown, for example, if I have lots of cooldown and points in my queue, I could get 2 Qs off. 1 Q when I Q like this, and 1 Q arguably up here, right? To get even more movement speed, depending on the cooldown. Now if you Q in here, you get even more movement speed just because when the camps reset, they provide you more movement speed because every time they reset, they gain shit ton of mobility. So we can see the movement speed difference, right? Right now I got, let's just restart, refresh all, right? So right now I only gonna get 430, right? And after, right, when they reset, you're gonna see that they're gonna be way more, right? And I look at my movement speed, 473, right? So this is like a fast way to go from A to B. Now, depending on your cooldown, you could get 2 rotations of Qs. From the other hand, how would you use it in lane? Of course, it's a point and click poke. If you have Cometa and Scorch, I would highly advise you to only use it when you have Cometa and Scorch in a Cometa and Scorch matchup, of course. Uh, from the other hand, how else would you use your Q? For example, if you're not quite in ult range, you could Q a minion, step forward, and then look for an ultimate in some case scenario, right? From the other hand, against some matchups like Garen, you want to layer your Q, which means that you want to use your Q only after he Qs, because your Q won't slow. So your Q won't slow because he Qs your Q. So his Q removes movement speed slows, right? So in some specific matchups, initiating with Q is not quite the thing, right? Now, from the other hand, you will clearly see like wherever your Q goes. So, for example, say someone is in the bush, right? Or like, how would I even say, like, say per moment you Q someone, you exactly will see where the Q will go towards. So, for example, if someone is trying to flash juke you in this direction and you Q them, for example, they sit something like in here, right? They could flash through the wall or inside of the bush, you could Q them, and the Q will always go in the trajectory where they are flashing towards, right? Or Kasad inwards, right? Or whatever. Now, how else would you use this Q? That's pretty much it I can think about, right? Like, there are some matchup specifics as well to this Malphite's Q, right? But generally speaking, that's all about his Q. Okay, so let's get to the next ability, his W, right? His W is the ability that provides him lots of armor, on-hit effects, AoE, wave clear, and what have you, right? Now, in here I'm gonna swing this, right? We can see that it has a small AoE effect, almost like Titanic Hydra, right? So generally you will use this to wave clear, right? Now there is a proper way to even like clear a wave. For example, ideally you should face tank a wave when the upcoming wave, right? So if some people don't know, I'm just gonna show it anyways, just in case some people don't know how to wave clear with this, because a lot of them, as I noticed, they don't wave clear properly. So this would be like the improper way to wave clear, right? Some people do this on Malphite. That's like really bad, right? So how you want to wave clear, you want to pull the melee minions into range ones, and you want to AoE as much as possible. But I quite often seen that Malphite players are legit just hitting the front 3 minions, and then they can't recall in time, right? So if you want to recall in time, you need to pull the minion wave on yourself, right? Don't wait, like if you want to wave clear fast, don't allow the minion wave to clutch. You don't want them to bump into each other. You want them to actually be stacked on you, so you can get a really good AoE and you can get a really good AoE W, right? So for example, if you are good enough, you can AoE most of these, right? You can probably AoE them a little bit better than I do, right? It's all about your positioning and how do you pull these together. Like this is a even better positioning, right? Now sometimes you won't get all of them. Sometimes it will happen you won't get all of them. But this is just like a little wave clearing trick, honestly. Also, your W is generally used just to get like a short rate because it provides bonus attack range. So into champs that have 125 attack range, like Tryndamere, as I said, Kled, stuff like that, you could sneak in like a basic attack with your W, then back off, right? Um, it's just pretty much like a spacing thing in higher ranks, right? Like you'd sneak in some basic attacks. As you can see, scales with armor, of course. It lasts like 5 seconds, but if you have enough cooldown, you can constantly maintain this ability, right? Now, let's get to the other one. So, there are some animation cancels you can do, of course, with your W. It's written in here. The cone starts from Malphite's location. It's pretty much it, right? And Malphite slams the ground. So let's go to his E, right? So Malphite does slam the ground, right? And he cripples someone for 3 seconds. It means it slows down your attack speed. It scales with AP and armor, which has synergy with your W, of course. The the cripple stacks multiplicatively with other sources of attack speed reductions. This ability casts wherever the caster is at the end of the cast time. So it means you can E-flash. I don't have flash on Malphite, but you can E-flash on Malphite. It's like a cool mechanic, I guess. And it also leaves like Riot Games logo in the on the ground if you can see it. Cool fact about it. How do you use this ability? Again, this thing outranges basic attacks, right? Which means you can use your E, right? Now into some matchups like Tryndamere, you don't want to randomly use your E. You want to use your E when he spins on you. So his all-in is less potent, right? So into all-in matchups, it's best if you don't use it to short trade because some champions will actually all-in you. Again, E is mostly used in a way that you initiate with your E in matchups where you can just short trade. And then you should look for a W basic attack, space backwards, space forwards, and get like another basic attack off. Okay, now let's get to the ultimate. Now Malphite's ult, right? Uh, the dash speed can be doubled up if unstoppable force is targeted at the middle of a wall. So what does this even mean? It goes twice as fast, which means they have less time to react. So there is a dummy right on the other side of the wall. I could ult him like this, right? I could ult him like that. Now if I click in the middle, my ult will be way faster. You saw the move, you saw the difference, right? So when someone is wall hugging by chance, like hypothetically, let's say like I don't know, there's something like here, or they're in a position where you could get a really easy Malphite ult off, then it would speed up the process, right? or maybe they're somewhere here, right? The more generic places will be here, right? So you should click in the middle of the wall, right? So this is mess upable, so you should practice to it, right? This is a generic place where people will sit, where the Baron would be up, right? So you gotta click beyond the wall. If you click inner, right, on my side, you're gonna arrive on my side. If you click on the other side of the wall, you're gonna get on the other side, right? So if it's leaning more towards the other side of the wall, you're gonna arrive on the other side, right? Same thing in here, right? You can see. You see the speed difference, right? It may not work on every single wall, I highly believe. So you gotta get a really specific angle, right? So this is something you actually gotta practice to on Malphite. Because a good ultimate is game winning, and the bad ultimate is game losing, actually, right? Believe me or not, it's game winning and game losing. Now I actually got it properly off, right? So it's not the same how quickly you can get an ult off on Malphite, but most of the Malphite players wouldn't even bother what I show in here, and they wouldn't even bother to practice. So I hope you are not one of them and aim to practice this mechanic on Malphite. Um, okay, now general runes of choices, right? Comet, Lethal Tempo, Grasp, Phase Rush, Unsealed Spellbook. These are things that are on my radar. One game I tried PTA as well, of course, on Malphite. It wasn't like bad, but Lethal Tempo can outdo it, right? So let's get straight up into it, right? So let's start from my personal preference, right? From lethal tempo. So when do you go for lethal tempo? Generally into matchups like Kayn, Garen, matchups that can short trade and disengage from your all-in, right? That's a really important thing to know. Or matchups where they are forced to play differently. For example, Wukong can arguably disengage from your lethal tempo all-in. The only issue is if he does do so, he has to give up his W, and that has a really long cooldown, right? So generally into matchups that are not good at short trading and they rather want to all-in you, right? Or your all-ins are way more potent because they usually sustain through your combat and through your grasp, so it's not really too worth to go for it, honestly. Phase Rush again, in which matchups would you go Phase Rush? So generally I would recommend you guys to get Phase Rush into matchups like Aatrox, Gwen, Darius, matchups where you need to disengage really fast, right? So generally it's not hard to proc it, right? It's not hard to proc Phase Rush, right? So you can get out of their grasp. Now, what else? Unsealed Spellbook is generally more so a high gelo thing. Usually you just do it just to play for your team. You can get the ghost, so you can go forward, you can look for an ultimate, TP, you can switch in between TP, Exhaust. Exhaust is good into assassins if they have multiple of them, right? Heal also can play. You just usually take it if you wanna just heavily play for your team, and no matter what you get in lane, you can beat your opponent. It's just something you would take just to play for your lane, right? Um, Okay, now from the other hand, Grasp. Like, when do you take Grasp? Usually matchups where you can't force an all-in, and where Comet is kinda useless. So generally matchups where you need the sustain, some HP stacking, of course, melee matchups, right? Melee matchups, that's a really important thing to point out, melee matchups, right? Because if you don't take it in melee matchups, then it's just gonna suck, because against range matchups, like against a Teemo, how are you supposed to get a Grasp proc, right? So into those type of matchups like Queen, right, you want to take Comet actually, because you can't stack Lethal Tempo on a Queen, you can't stack PTA on a Queen. Yeah, the only thing you can do is just actually go Comet, right? So into some matchups it's really one-sided, you're gonna go Comet, right? Um, okay. Now, from the other hand, which one did I mention? I talked about Comet again. Comet generally matchups like Queen Teemo, short trading range matchups, usually Jace, right? Stuff like that, where you can't do anything with the alternative runes. Um, and PTA, I took PTA, it wasn't bad, but the Little Tempo feels to be a bit better in Orleans. It's just like PTA is better in like short trades, right? Like I seen pro players before going for PTA against matchups like Camille. It's definitely good in short trades and it helps your teammates as well a little bit with their DPS. But I generally advise you guys to go for Little Tempo over that. I'm not sure, I don't have like a complete opinion over that. But one thing to clear out that like generally lethal tempo should be better in all-ins than the other one is, of course, right? And in here I'm just stalling this guy for fun. Now let's get to the itemization of Malphite, right? I want to talk about items. So, what should you build on Malphite? First item, Iceborne Gauntlet. Should you rush plated steel caps? Should you even get plated steel caps? Should you get Iceborne Gauntlet? So, some games you can also go Ionian boots if you want to solely play for your teammates and get as much ult off as possible, right? Now, from the other hand, uh, cooldown also helps you to, of course, maintain your W almost constantly, and your E slow can be constantly up. So cooldown actually provides you resistances, because the more frequently you reapply your E, the less DPS they have, right? That's something I want you guys to understand. And also, the more DPS you have, the more cooldown you have, of course, right? Now in here, of course, like the auto refresh thing just refreshes all the time as your item, right? Like you can take plated some games, of course, it depends on the game, right? Like usually defensive boots, these are your three options, as I know. Boots of Swiftness, I didn't really try it, honestly. But let's get to the next items, right? So, Sapphire is a bit of a weird item. It helps you wave clear, but you already have wave clear. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. What I would recommend you guys is to get Thornmail into range matchups like Queen. The reason for that is not too often you're gonna get Iceborne Gauntlet procs on the Queen unless you ult. Again, depends how likely you can all-in her with your ultimate. If it's not too likely, then what you can do is just like simply go for Thornmail. What Thornmail allows you to do is just basically you're gonna get constant trades on the Queen. If she does not have any form of sustain like Fleetwork Foot or Lifesteal, then you should definitely aim to get this, just because it's really insane even in short trades when your passive is up, or even if your passive is not up, it still should provide a decent amount of like reflection damage into those type of ranged AD champs, which means that they can't fight you anymore as soon as you get Thornmail. Now, against Rindamir, for example, you could also get Frozen Heart. It's really insane. It slows his attack speed, gives you mana, a loss of armor, and what this item allows you to do is just generally like cut their attack speed, give yourself a lots of damage, because of course it provides a lot of armor. This is also really good into champions like Akshan. Akshan just really gets stat checked usually as soon as you get Frozen Heart, because he has double auto attacks the same way as Urgot does, right? Because they have multiple basic attacks, and this reduces attack speed, of course. And aside of that, it has the rock solid effect, which reduces flat amount of damage. Now, let's get to another one, right? So, like Frozen, like Iceborne Gauntlet is more so the aggressive, more expensive choice, right? Usually you want to take it if you are dominating your lane. No, like if you're dominating really hard your lane, this is gonna be great, because this is gonna allow you to get more plates, shop faster, of course, a little bit. Like it's gonna help you to take out down objectives faster. This is usually the general choice of Malphite, but if they have a lots of AP champions or champions that build on hit items, I would highly recommend you to go Jack Show. Uh, Radiant Virtue is not a recommended thing from my. I don't really like it on Malphite right now, honestly. I would rather tell you guys to go Jack Show. Then if they have heavy AP on hit champs, I would also highly recommend you guys to go for Force of Nature. It provides you lots of MR, some movement speed, of course. It really depends on the enemy comp, of course, right? Now, from the other hand, let's say we start out with Iceborne Gauntlet. Now, your second item should be dependent on what do you value, right? So, a Tormail shouldn't even be specifically taken that they have anti-heal. Right now, in some matchups, you want to rush Bramble West, right? But you shouldn't specifically take Tormail just because they have healing. It has good synergy with Malphite because it scales with armor. So usually, like, Bramble West is the go-to if you're facing Fiora. Generally speaking, healing champions that you're gonna have a rough time with, right? Okay, so we already talked about this. Now, when do you go Everfrost on Malphite? Even in pro play, we've seen that people are going for stuff like Everfrost, right? Now, you can't Everfrost quite in your ultimate, right? You can only do it after. So, it's a build that's gonna make you more squishy, but it will allow you to have more CC in your kit, right? So, you can actually pin someone down for 1.5 seconds, then for 1 second, which gonna mean that it's 2.5 seconds pin down, right? It's like a Malzahar ultimate. So, generally speaking, into squishier team comps you're gonna take it, but it's not too recommended because it's gonna make you really vulnerable. That's just my opinion, honestly. So, Iceborne Gauntlet start, Boots of Choice, of course, and then you can choose to go Cosmic Drive if you really want to. The reason why you would go for it, it provides you AP, everything on Malphite scales with AP, then it provides lots of cooldown as well. And the more cooldown you have, of course, the more you can actually spam your ultimate, right? So it all comes down to like having a bit more stickiness with your Q spam and with your ultimate spam, right? So it's all about stickiness. You could also arguably get in some games Zanye because it provides armor, AP, everything that Malphite likes, plus a really good activatable. It's usually good into like champions like Trundle usually to win some time. Meantime, he steals your armor, of course, right? Or let's say like Fiora, it helps you to win some time, of course, or Urgot, another really good example, but usually you don't take it matchup specifically, you take it specifically into the enemy team as well. So it's really good into champs like Lux, right? Because she all-ins you, can dodge her whole all-in with Zonye, but it's not really an item that's too often builded on Malphite. Okay, so anti-heal against auto attackers, you're gonna take Thornmail. Same thing, Frozen Heart, great in certain matchups. Then what else can you do? You can even arguably get as a late game item Hullbreaker if you are looking to split push, but this is more so low looting, and usually as Malphite you're gonna play for team fights. But if you're dominating hard enough, you can actually even like extend your lead to the side lane because you're gonna deal shit ton of damage with the Hullbreaker itself, and you're gonna have shit ton of resistances. It really depends how hard you're dominating your matchups, and it really depends on how like if they have HV based true damage and they have like a stronger like side laner than you are, then I would recommend you to not go for it. But there is a word where you actually go for this item. It just really takes lots of game understanding when you would go for it, and it's also dependent on your rank. Okay, so Abyssal Mask. Can it be a great item? Is it a good item? So it's definitely great because it provides you bonus damage on all of your abilities, right? Because you deal AP damage, except your W, of course, right? Usually don't take it for yourself. You take it for your teammates. So if your teammates have a Barzami champion or even like one hit AD carries right value this item, then you're gonna go for Abyssal Mask because a Veigar getting that juicy 21, 25 MR reduction or a Syndra values it a lot. Trust me, they value it a lot. Or even an unstoppable mage like Vladimir, it definitely does amplify their damage in teamfights, right? So the more AV your teammates have, the better it is because this applies to multiple champions, not only one. And you're also gonna steal away their MR. I mean, you're gonna get some MR. You don't steal away their MR. You only take like 21, but you gain like 9 MR, depending on how many targets are around, right? Okay. From the other hand, Gargoyle is usually the late game item you're gonna get, right? It's the late game item. You're gonna provide you some shielding, of course, lots of like defensive stats here and there. It's definitely a great, like, it's usually your last item. That's usually your last tank item. These are the tank items, right? Okay, good. Now, what else would you go on Malphite? So, in some rare games, you could also arguably go for Deadman's Plate where you value some mobility and you want to catch up with your ult faster, right? But usually you have teammates that have Shureli, like I wouldn't recommend you. If your teammates have speed up, I wouldn't ever recommend you to go for this. Um, Again, like specifically you can get Titanic Hydra and Witsend if you really feel like, maybe even Borg if you're going for the on-hit build. This is something I played on ranked. Like, I really like it. It's a really fun build. It's a really strong build, right? It makes you definitely a really strong like on-hit champion. Provides some on-hit effects, right? It's not usually Malphite style, but it's definitely is a really fun build and you can carry with it. It's even better in lower ranks, of course. Uh, Again, depends on the game, but in lower ranks, I would highly recommend you guys to go for a non-hit build, so it's more likely you're gonna carry, right? Uh, don't go for this. Don't go for this. Sometimes you can go for Sunfire, but you already have a good wave clear. I don't see much point on going for Sunfire when the champion scales so well with better items like Thornmail or the other item, of course, like Frozen Heart. Don't quite see a reason for it. Uh, Mythic of choice, Frostfire, Jack Show, dog shit, don't ever go for it. Um, that's it from now, guys. I do believe I talked about Actually, wait, I didn't talk about the macro of Malphite. So, if you're not winning side lane, you're not gonna side lane, right? If you can. What you're gonna mostly do with Malphite's ultimate if you face a matchup like Mordekaiser, where you ult the Mordekaiser but he stat checks you anyways, right? Uh, you want to actually just you want your jungler to gain kill, and if Mordekaiser ults you, you can ult, which means his ult won't go off on you, right? Or what else you can do, if your jungler is never ever ganking you, you should spare your ultimate into matchups where you can't actually like ult them, right? Like you ult them, they just start check you and kill you, right? What you should do in those type of matchups, you should actually just walk to mid lane and get a mid lane ult off, right? Maybe even flash ult if you don't need to, but you can just get an ult off and set up a kill for your mid laner. Um, or arguably you could start like a Herald fight, maybe the enemy jungler steps up, maybe you all in him with your jungler, but it's usually kept. Usually you won't use it on your enemy auto plane unless you can kill them, and in mid late game what you should do, tell your AD carry to position alone on mid lane. Let's say like here is the enemy champion, or let's say they don't see you, right? So you want to, I shouldn't actually place them quite opposing. Let's say your ally champion is something here, enemy champion here. You should just shadow, stay in, like in here the enemy champion does not see me, right? So you should just shadow your teammate. So as soon as Talon jumps in, you can ult, right? So it's really about intercepting all-ins, right? So what you should aim to do is just like simply hover your teammates, intercept all-ins, don't reveal yourself. That's what like a lot of Malphite players do. They constantly reveal themselves. From the other hand, side lane, you should only side lane into champs like Tryndamere, where you have to match them, right? Usually you're gonna like shove out side lanes, rotate for an objective because of your ultimate, or TP to an objective, right? Depends. Uh, but side laning is not like the main thing for Malphite, right? Some games you can side lane, but it's not usually the main thing. Like usually you are just team fighting with this champion as much as you can, and in team fights you should spare your ultimate for the most important champion. So for example, if the enemy AD carry something like uh say like realistically hinted, let's say he's like 310 or something, right? He is not too useful, then probably you need to spare your ultimate for the generic like low elo carry champion, for Katarina, Master Yi, and so on, right? So it's not always about like using it because you can get a kill, right? You won't always use it on the daily carry because they might just be shit behind, and it's not a big necessity for you to give up your ultimate. In fact, like as I said, some games you should spare it into the Mastery, into the Katarina, into the Yasuo, right? Um, okay. Now, aside of this, generally speaking, you can use your ultimate, of course, to get through CC, so it makes you unstoppable. Maybe I didn't mention it before, but that's also a really important thing to know. I mean, it's written on the ability, so you can get through CC. You shouldn't be afraid of CC. Um, that's like pretty much it. Like from mid lane, you can also look for collapse angles from the Raptor, of course, from the Raptor pit, right? Not only from the reverse side if your laner is pushing, right, but in matchups where you can't use your ultimate, you better be using it on mid lane, maybe give up some CS if it's needed. But you gotta remember, you're not necessarily playing for top lane when you pick Malphite, right? Um, I think that's it for now. I mean, probably there were some things that I didn't necessarily mention. Of course, if you have something smart to say or something to add to this Malphite guide, definitely leave a comment. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask them, of course. Also, if you're by chance looking for league coaching, you can also add me on Discord. Uh, oh, it's not written because streamer thingy, right? My Discord name is Gaby, hashtag 508. I definitely did peak challenger as it's written. I can even reveal it. There's like a rank proof about me. You can see in here the rank, of course. Um, that's it from now then. Have a nice day.